Welcome our panelists.
Oh, does this work? Is this working? No.
It's on.
Hello. Oh, awesome. There you go. Great. Welcome, everybody. End of the day. Thank you for sticking around. Usually the bar comes after the panel, so I catch you. But now it's better because the panel has a few drinks in them. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, I'm really excited to be moderating the panel here. It's been a long time since I've been working with Kim, but I used to do all the virtual panels. And I'm really excited to be back in person, as I can tell everybody is here today. It's been jam-packed with people, amazing vendors, presentations, and more importantly, questions from the audience. So we're about ready to begin the panel. We have 5 panelists, so it's a lot of people that we're going to be going to as experts. But I really want to get you involved in the conversation. So please ask questions. We have our lovely gentleman back here who is going to run to you with the microphone to ask the question. But this makes it so much more interesting when you ask the questions. But first, we're going to start with introductions. And I'm going to start with Wolf at the end and come down to here, and then we'll start into the panel questions.
Well, hi, I'm Wolf Halton. I am AVP of Security Architecture at US Bank / Elevon. I got my start at a US Bank and Elevon with PCI and audit support. And a little before that, I started writing books about hacking, and at this point I have 4 books out about hacking and 1 book about the 3 most common things that get through, the most common things involved in breaches.
Wolf, I'm going to interrupt you for a second. Can we please have everybody quiet down in the back? It's really hard to hear up here. Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Ken Viciana. I'm the VP of Global Data and Analytics Products at TSYS. TSYS, we're part of Global Payments. Been in Atlanta for 15 years or so. Been in the data, analytics, security, IT space, for over 20 years now. So look forward to the conversation.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dean Mallis. I am, as they said, AGM of Information Security. Such a strange title, but that's how MARTA titles it, and in effect the CISO for MARTA. Been here for 20 some odd years. Ride MARTA. It pays my salary.
Hey, Ken Foster, I got an invite to this. I'm not sure why I'm here. No. Hey, I'm the VP of GRC Identity, Other Duties as Assigned over at FLEETCOR right now. I've been working in the Atlanta security and IT community for about 23 years now. So great to see everybody. Appreciate it.
You've got me beat. I'm only 20 years. Well done. But Phyllis Woodruff, I'm VP of IT Risk and Compliance with Global Payments. Again, I've been in the payments industry and in security and risk for the better part of the last 20 years. Thank you all for being here.
Yeah, thank you. What an amazing panel. How many years of experience is sitting up here now? So ask away your questions. But we're going to start, and I'm actually going to kind of piggyback on a few things that Ken had said during his talk at lunch today. But we're going to get right into it with nation state. And most of the nation state actors that we've been most familiar with are against critical infrastructure, obviously, and there's a number of companies up here that represent critical infrastructure. But I want the panel to talk to you about what it looks like for, I'm going to put this in quotes, an ordinary company to be hit by nation state. And I'm going to start with Dean, who, and I'm encouraging the panel to share war stories. And I'm also encouraging you to ask questions throughout. Don't wait till the end.
So there's, to me, no ordinary companies. Everyone is a target. You look at what nation states are trying to do, and they're trying to get data. Hackers are trying to get data. And I hearken back to, I think it was 2017, if you guys are familiar with the Paradise Papers, where hackers breached a law firm to get all the data from the Facebooks, the Apples, those companies that are hardened. They went to the soft targets. Nation states, what I have learned, don't rest. They'll take years to acquire data just to breach an organization. So they could spend, they can be, well, I'll say they're in Ken's organization for 10 years. They'll spend it, they won't do anything, but they're waiting for that time to attack. If you follow any of the FBI briefings and all, and I'm sure you all are on those lists, it's every day they're warning about those attacks that are coming, or the nation states have funded. It's business. They have a lot of money. It's not just the guy sitting in the basement, you know, with that hoodie that people think is happening. It's a day job for them. So there are no ordinary companies. You're all at risk, and we're all fighting the same enemies.
Can you pass it to Ken?
I can.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant, yes.
That Ken.
This Ken. Sorry.
It's always that Ken. Just now, I agree with you, Dean, on that. It is something interesting to think about, because we talked about it a little bit earlier, right? The impact of quantum computing and nation state, right? I firmly believe quantum computing for most of us isn't something we should be worried about right now, but it will be. But what I think is you go back to these massive data breaches that we've seen over the last 10, 15 years, right? So let's take the OPM breach. A whole lot of data was stolen about a whole lot of us in this room, right? I would posit to say that there's an incredible amount of us that have worked in that environment where OPM had all our data, has a lot of data about us. I've joked about it before that there is a better me somewhere in China, but what it really means is they're setting on massive amounts of data, and whether it's encrypted or not, I would be more impressed if that was a beer, but they're setting on massive amounts of data about a lot of companies, about a lot of IP, about a lot of people. And I firmly believe that they're waiting on the quantum computing to get to a point where they can then action off of that data, right? They're just storing it right now, waiting on the technology to get to a point where they can actually monetize and actually get value out of that data. So I do think that's, from a nation state standpoint, something we really have to be thinking about. They've been collecting data for the last 15, 20 plus years. They have a massive amount of it. The cost and the ability to do things with quantum computing are going to allow them to action it and monetize it in a way that we've never seen before. So I think that's what's coming. Yes?
Can you pass it? Oh, sorry, go ahead, yes. No, go ahead. Oh, Phyllis. Go ahead, Phyllis. Oh, the mic is coming.
Oh, and go ahead and ask your question, because I was going to shift things a little bit.
Thank you. 2 questions. So number 1, how would they action the data? And number 2, what do you guys think about TikTok?
Do you want to do that? Or?
Phyllis?
Oh, okay, so I had to be late because of a very special chat with an auditor today. Just lovely. And the guys, of course, all threatened to give me every question. So I was once accused recently by one of my people, wonderful young person, who said to me, "Do you know what TikTok is?" So yes, I do know what TikTok is. In terms of how they're going to action the data, I've been financial services, as I mentioned, for far too long. And one of the things that we do is we look for the out-of-wallet creds that you can use to identify yourself, right? How do we really know it's you? Whether it's a location you're coming from, whether it's your dog's name, whether it's the answer to one of those 5 special questions that I always have to make lowercase because I can never remember where I capitalized. But they will have all of that at their disposal, right? That means that you're at risk. Not only can the financial institution be hacked, not only can your gas company be hacked, not only can MARTA be at risk, right?
Thank you for not saying hacked.
I want you to sleep tonight. Okay. But each and every one of you is at risk too. Right now, there's a real problem with hackers attacking the elderly because they're not as on their guard, right? We have that problem with the very young as well. You know, I've got grandchildren that range from 3 to 16. That 16-year-old is just as vulnerable as a 75 or 80-year-old, right? So Any information that the hackers have on you can be turned against you. Anything that they have on you can be used to access our systems, right? Because if you look at a DDoS attack with stuffing, what they're doing is taking the creds that they've harvested and then using any of the passwords you might have, any of the out-of-band information, the out-of-wallet information, and using that to get through our defenses. Because once they're on the inside, they can reach us. I hope that helped.
The only other thing I'll add to that, right, and you brought up a great point, it's leverage, right? What they're going to do with that is they're going to leverage it. And I said this earlier, right? We were talking about the report where I had said anybody under $70,000 in employment will sell their creds. Well, if I don't have to pay you $7 because I've got information on you and I have leverage on you and I don't have to actually pay you for that, it's cost savings, right? It's more cost effective, it's easier to do because I'm using it as a blackmail technique to use leverage, right? So it's all about leverage. You got to think about if I have certain data on you or anybody, how can I use that to gain an advantage? How do I use that to get myself into a position of advantage? That's what they're doing with this. And if you're a security professional or IT professional sitting in this room with TikTok on your phone, I question your. I'm trying to be polite here. I am trying to be very polite here, but I would question on why it's on your device. I'll leave it at that.
Actually, I have a follow-up question. Sorry.
I think that the biggest thing about nation-state attacks is this is not mission impossible. You may think your company or yourself is so small and unimportant that no one will ever notice you. They won't look at you. I have dozens of people who tell me about how insignificant they are. But the thing is, when you send out malware or spyware or ransomware, you're not looking for the one, you're looking for the everyone. And so don't be too conceited about how special you are. And it's like Dean was saying, your company is important not just because you have a lot of money or you have a lot of whatever, it's that you have a computer that they can use as an attack vector. You have video cameras and printers they can use as an attack vector. And in some ways, I like to think, instead of thinking of nation states as a war machine, like cyber war has never really happened. There's cyber warfare tactics. And some of them are big hammer tactics, like distributed denial of service, like right now going on between Russia and Ukraine. And that sort of stuff happens against all of us at some extent, to some rate. And maybe if you have a business that's critical infrastructure, you feel so special that you actually look for it. But if you check your web logs, you're probably getting the same kind of attacks on your systems as all of those big companies. So, and again, like Dean said, take it as, you have to be careful, instead of that you can somehow slip by, or, I'm not special enough to be picked out.
Sorry.
We have a question over here. Go
yes,
ahead.
Just to follow up on that
hold
comment.
on.
Sorry, just to follow up on that comment. You're talking about threat actors, the risks. So what is the control or remediation? You have these nation states who have a day job trying to, let's say, a U.S. company, small mom and pop, mid-sized company, a big corporations with a SOC place. So how do we deal with that? Because nation states, Russia, China, name it, they share their information. It's authoritarian or military regime. They have everybody working towards a common target, as opposed to our government is, on the different page, Private sector is at different page. Academia is at different page. So we are at odds with nation state. And if I'm a small mom and shop, how can I justify security budget? I don't have the money to buy the silver bullet or all these vendors. So how do I deal with it?
I have an answer for that. The first thing is that training budget that you may think isn't all that important is because you want people to be aware of the problems of the possible ransomware or spoofed emails and things like that. And you also want to do the basic simple things well, like have a longer password, require it. Don't let people have 6-character passwords or 8-character. 9 was already too small in 2014. And so now if you think about, and you've heard this through the day, have a password that's, for instance, this is my excuse, use your favorite poem or your favorite poem book and take a line or half a line from that poem to be your password. It takes, a lot of people are confused about encryption. They think it's a little like picking a lock where you can pick one cylinder at a time and you've got the lock picked and it goes click and now it's open. You have to unencrypt the whole hash at a time. The longer your password, the more difficult. If you've got a 20-character password, it could reasonably take 1.5 million years for somebody to crack it. If all of your people have that kind of password, then you then have to more worry about when they get a spoofed email, do they click on the link, right? So that's all cheap. That's super cheap, but most people aren't doing it, and you know why? It's not sexy. It's not cool. It's not mission impossible. It's not the sort of the thing that a lot of vendors, nobody here of course, but a lot of vendors want to say, oh, well, we've got the best solution for 0 days. 0 days are a sexy thing because they come out of nowhere and they're a huge problem. But if you have good passwords, there's a terrific way to stop a lot of stuff coming in and good training. And then followed by update your operating systems, update your computers when they go out of warranty. A lot of tech owners, that's not us, we're more in the security biz, but the tech owners want to run their computers till the wheels fall off because don't you know how expensive this thing is?
So, yep, thank you.
Right?
I just want to keep things.
Have I done enough?
So we have time.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. No. Let's pass it. Did you want to say something?
No.
Okay, all right.
I think Wolf just had the best question of all day.
I know, exactly.
And the answer to that is no. You haven't. I mean, in general, that's the problem, right?
So just so we can get all the questions in that we have, so let's start with the hypothetical, or go to the hypothetical, where it's impossible, we say that it's impossible to stop all the attacks, which it likely is. Are organizations, are you focusing more on preventing the attack, or are you focusing more on recovery? And then you can talk about technology as well. Well, let's start with Phyllis. Sure. And then we're going to go to Ken, because he hasn't talked yet.
I think, frankly, it's a combination of the two. You need belts and braces. So we've been big proponents of making sure that incident response is in place, that disaster recovery is in place, that you have your risk scenarios played out. That is of critical importance. But back to Wolf's point about hygiene, hygiene impacts not only the little mom and pop shop, not only my 16-year-old granddaughter, but major companies as well. Are you doing the small things right? One of those things, which is not so small, is your risk analysis. So I once sat down with a CISO who told me, oh, we're getting hacked and we're getting attacked 15,000 times a day. And what he was talking about was just those things that were being rejected at the firewall. And I just looked at him, raised an eyebrow, and said, and what of that is important, and why are you bothering me with that? But with that said, there are those things that could be cataclysmic. For us as an issuer and also as a merchant acquirer, it's all of our client data. So we have a great deal of protection around all of that, including necessary alerting. And with that, maybe I'll pass it off to Ken.
The other Ken.
The other Ken.
The other Ken.
I get to talk. Wow, this is great.
Wow.
I don't have TikTok on my phone. Was going to chime in on that. I do have a hashtag Viciana data. Just a little self-plug right there. If we're not connected on LinkedIn, that's good. So yeah, I mean, to Phyllis's point, there's a balance. Obviously, controls up front that are going to block attacks are ideal, but you do have to have that response and all that follow through in place. From a data standpoint, I mean, you're trying to protect the crown jewels of the company as much as possible. We're doing a great deal to secure, customer data, sensitive data. I think a lot of our companies are on cloud journeys, right? So we've got additional controls in place to try to mitigate risk if something did happen in the cloud. So like our strategy is we tokenize all of the sensitive PII, PCI data before going up into the cloud, which, it's a good control to have in place. I'd say think about where your risk is in your data and your environments, and think about ways that you can add in controls and rigor and mitigate risk.
I think you got a great radio voice. Yes. Face for radio, too. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So I think a lot of us focus around prevention, and if you talk to your IT department and ask them when was the last time they tested their backups, right? Or are they even doing backups? Are the backups off-site? Are the backups free from being encrypted? You'll probably get a very surprising response. So we focus a lot around let's do the protection, but we're not really focusing around the resiliency. And it goes into the incident response, but you got to get your data back. The city of Atlanta was breached in 2018, I think it was. There's data that they will not get back and have not been able to get back. It is gone because their backups weren't resilient. And the first thing the SamSam did was go back and encrypt their backups first before it encrypted the rest of the city of Atlanta. So I encourage people to focus on that because it's really important. I don't have TikTok on my phone. You might see some videos out there of me. I'm sorry. I'm just kidding. But TikTok, from a perspective, and I'm just going to peel off over here for a second, for your kids is horrible. The algorithms that TikTok runs to manipulate your kids, brutal. I wouldn't have it on their phone. That's just my pitch for keeping your kids protected.
Like pretty much the whole table here is saying, we like to be balanced, but first and foremost, you have to know what you're protecting. Because sometimes, in some situations, protection is going to give you more bang for your buck than recovery. And so that's the way we look at it. We have teams who look at what's at risk and what's the value, and we rate those risks. It's not really, you can't be, like they say, you can't be good at everything, but my team is good at a lot of things. My team is probably the best group I've worked with for training the business line project owners about how security helps them. We get calls from business lines and development teams saying, please tell us whether this is going to be safe and secure. I don't know any place else where I've had development teams who make that kind of phone call. We do this all the time. So that's my plug for my team.
I was going to say that I'm probably going to piss people off, but I don't think it's never stopped me before. Yeah, I was going to say that was kind of no point in saying that, right? But protect is great. It is bang for the buck. resiliency and recover is a good thing. What we really need to get better at is detection once they're in, because they're in, like we talked about earlier, right? Close to 300-day dwell time. They're in. They're watching. They're listening. They're patient. As Dean and everybody brought up earlier, right? It's a full-time job for these folks who do not have regulatory concerns, who do not have law concerns, who do not have chief compliance officer. They don't have people like me going, why are you doing that? That's stupid, right? You know, they have got all day, every day, working in 3 shifts with tech support, right? It's a business. It's a getting ready to be $1 trillion business, setting in a country that they know doesn't have extradition, that they're not going to get in trouble. And we go back to the state-sponsored thing. They more than likely are loosely state-sponsored anyway. From a public eye, non-public eye, they're very state-sponsored, right? You've got to be better at detecting when they're in your environment and doing stuff that not necessarily out of the norm, but they're doing stuff that's masked as a normal, everyday business process and going, wait a minute, something doesn't make sense here. And that's very hard to do, right? It's very difficult. Most of the tools we buy today are designed to look for abnormal, not normal being slightly manipulated. And until we get better at detecting automatically slightly manipulated normal, we're always going to be behind. We're always going to be behind the curve. But you've got to be thinking like a bad guy, right? And you guys heard me earlier say compliance. I run it, and I still think it's kind of BS from a security standpoint, right? Because there are a lot of things we do that only are checking boxes because somebody 20 years ago decided that was a thing that's a good thing to do, and it really doesn't move the needle on lowering risk or making us more secure. So you've got to be thinking about how would something in my environment be monetized or be used for evil, is a better way to put it, right? How are they going to manipulate my data? How are they going to, and look, there's nobody on this panel right now that knows more about hacking into your system than the gentleman sitting at the end. Like, if you haven't read his books, I'm gonna give you a pitch. If you haven't read Wolf's books on hacking, you should, because there's nobody here who knows more about this. But you've got to be thinking about how or what am I doing, and it gets back into the everybody. It doesn't matter whether you're a Fortune 500 company or you're a mom and pop shop, because you may be a mom and pop shop that's providing a service to a Fortune 500 company, and you may be used as the soft target, the underbelly to get in. So you got to always be thinking about that, and you've always got to be teaching people, using that as a chance to educate on why you're a conduit, not necessarily a target, but a conduit for a much greater purpose. And not everybody realizes that. And we got a question right here.
Amazing. Question? Yes, microphone.
So you all talked about using long passwords. With threat actors using applications like DHash that allow you to align passwords with email addresses and things like that, what will organizations do to defend against that? Because even if you use a 14-letter password, if it's already been compromised or reused, that user is still vulnerable.
Phyllis?
Don't you love the way they do that? Love being the only woman on the panel. No, really, that is an issue, and reuse of passwords is a problem. And part of our education is to strongly recommend a password vault, the use of individualized and distinct passwords, particularly for those critical items. You know, your bank account password should be like none other. Your email password should be like none other, because that's so often used for password recovery, right? So you have to be tremendously careful with that. You're absolutely right.
I think.
So, I mean, and multi-factor, I mean, that's just a given for that. But I just wanted to touch on what Ken said, is the patience of the nation states and the patience of those actors is, I can't stress it enough, in the briefings that I've been at, in the FBI briefings, they just talk about them grabbing data, and then they look and they say, why did they take all that stuff? What are they gonna do with it? And they wait years and years and years. I had a cat once that was staring at the heater on the floor, and I come back an hour later and that cat's still staring there, and there was a mouse in there. That's what they're patient. They will sit there and wait and wait and wait. And to your point, is if we don't have good detection, we're kind of screwed.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, right there. Oh wait, hold on a second. We actually do. Sorry, we have a virtual audience listening in. They need to hear you on the microphone. Cool. Yep.
Hey guys, thank you for being here. Building on passwords and the discussion around passwords, I wanted to understand what the panel's view on adopting zero trust is, what the appetite is there, and then adopting things around that maybe are a little bit more fringy, emerging tech stuff around using the blockchain for authentication, using NFTs for authentication, or going passwordless altogether and eliminating the need for passwords.
I have some very strong opinions on zero trust, but it's the problem is it's more of a cultural problem than it is a technology problem, right? So, number one, passwords. Eventually, we're going to move to a passwordless environment, but it's not the technology that vaults a password and then gives us a hardware key or a hardware token to move us past passwordless. It's getting us into an environment where we're using a certificate of some kind, and it knows enough about us to be able to appropriately apply MFA or block us once we've reached a certain risk level, right? So it becomes about risk measurement, right? Zero trust helps in a lot of ways. I'll use the industry buzzword today, but in reality, it's encryption, it's least privileged, it's segmentation, it is inventory control, and it's good process. And earlier today, I was talking about this, right? This is stuff we have been talking about for 20 years. That is cyber hygiene. It's just, I don't even call it cyber hygiene. It's IT hygiene. It is the ability to understand that we can't allow someone, because they complain about it, to not change a password. And now we've moved to this new level when we start talking about APIs and we start talking about this bots and RPA is also a problem, right? But APIs, and we're now, these are entities that are not human, but it's acting like a human in a lot of ways. And a developer and a business person somewhere have said, well, I can't change that password on a frequent basis or make it long because shit, that breaks the application. We're not gonna be able to make revenue, right? And I want it just to be this password forever, and I don't want to ever change it, right? Well, the problem is like we were talking about earlier, if you're poor at detection, right, you've now got an API that can move data faster than you ever could as a human, and it can be easily masked as a business process, and I can exfiltrate a massive amount of data by poisoning an API in a way that allows me to hide that and get it out, right? So we have got to get better about just looking at the overall process, and it's a cultural shift, right? More than tech. You're probably going to hear me say this a lot. It's just because I believe it 100%. This is not a technology problem. This is an absolute cultural problem, and part of our job is to teach that, get that cultural improvement, right? Because we're asking people to do a job and do things differently than what they've done in the past. And now we're asking people to say, you don't need this much access. But I've always had this much access, right? I've always been able to do this. Nobody's asking the question, why? Why have you always been given the right to do this? And we're not, in a lot of ways, and I will say that there's a lot of people in this room who probably agree with me. We would put our foot down and stop it today. Problem is we're not the person who can stop it, because we're going to get bypassed. Somebody brought this up earlier today, is how do you stop the end? There she is. How do you stop the end around? Well, you don't stop the end around. The only thing you can do is continue to have those discussions, continue to build those relationships, continue to stress why it's a bad thing when people are allowed to end around security.
That's good. Question right here. Where's our microphone?
Okay. I have a customer that someone swapped his phone, and so the multi-factor authentication don't work, the password don't work, because the person that swapped the phone, he tried to make transfer from his bank account, so the code come to the phone and he has the phone, he has everything. So I don't know how that happened and how to prevent that.
I was going to hype up MFA before that.
I think Wolf wanted
before
to
that
answer
conversation.
too. After Ken, we'll pass it to Wolf.
That scenario is very unique, I would say. Most people aren't handing their phone to people, or people aren't stealing phones to run MFA. I don't like passwords. It's a problem. I can never remember them. I think we all try to come up with different schematics. You mentioned poems, and everyone's got their own flavor. If you want to give me your passwords, that's fine. I'm not up here to give you mine. But I appreciate MFA as a guy who struggles with passwords. I think it's the necessary control at this juncture. I don't think it solves every problem. Like the scenario you gave us there, my phone is like glued to my hand, so I don't think I would run into that issue typically.
Give it to the other kid. I do have a question on that. If he lost his phone, was it not password protected? Did it not have a biometric on it? But I'm just asking for more information on the scenario, right? Because, hell, I'm aggravated at mine because every 3 minutes I have to look at it, so it'll let me log into it. But and trust me, nobody wants to have this mug on their phone, right? But there you go. Yeah. Well, I am Scrampus. But now, I mean, that would be a question: is if that device is my MFA, is my passwordless tool, have I, as a company, not forced a password or a biometric on that before that can be used? So even if I lose my phone and it's encrypted, for the most part, because I've worked in some places where, yes, I'm very well aware of the weaknesses of the device that can be swiped. And is it uncrackable? No. Does it take a level of expertise and some tools that your average common hacker who is trying to quickly monetize something has access to? No. Nation state, on the other hand, all bets are off, right? Or just somebody who has, hell, your local police department has actually tools that can actually get into most of your devices, whether actually your local Verizon store, if you're not paying attention to the device that they use to actually transfer data between your phones. Cellbrite, Cellbrite's one of them. There's X-Ray is another one. There's a couple other ones out there. Supposedly there's functionality that's only limited to the federal government on those devices that your local cell phone provider doesn't have. I wouldn't bet money on it, but it can do things that most people can't. But if I get access to a Cellbrite, all bets are off. You got an Apple phone, I don't necessarily have to crack your phone, I have to crack your iTunes account, right? Don't forget about social engineering, right? Social engineering is a big part of that. But if I just left my phone setting here, they had no idea who I am, they just found a phone, it would be very difficult for them to get into it. it would take a lot more time than it's probably worth, right, than that. So my question is if I am allowing a BYOD policy where people are actually using their device to access my system, why have I not put controls on that phone that make it much more difficult for me to be able to use that phone to crack into the corporate environments? Like, I can tell you right now, if I don't have a password on my phone, the MFA quits working, the email quits working, I don't have access to any of that. So what you brought up, is it possible? Absolutely. Are the companies doing that? I guarantee you they are. It just brings more questions to mind for me, is like, why did the company who is allowing people to do that not being smarter about what they're allowing people to do with that endpoint device?
So, okay, so we'll take another question in the back, since you haven't asked one yet, and then I want to move on to the next question. Oh, I'm sorry, Wolf, go ahead.
I wanted to make a little point about that. There's a cell phone stolen in the US about every 20 seconds. And what they do with them, because it's very easy to do, is they pop out the SIM and they use the phone, they sell it to a company that will buy phones without looking too deeply into where it came from. And they make their $20 or $30 on a $1,000 phone. So it costs you a lot, or it costs your insurance company a lot, but it doesn't cost, especially since most phones that get stolen are just, here's this phone in front of a table, it's on a table, nobody's near it. They went to the bathroom and left their phone. This is brain dead, but I know you've seen this, and you've thought to yourself, I should pick up all these untenanted phones and just take them to the desk and say, I found a phone, just for fun. Because that other option is very much more like you have been personally targeted by a nation state, most likely, and that they sent somebody out into the field to come get your phone. Why didn't they get you and not be breaking your fingers right now? You'd give them all your passwords. I would, for sure. Just saying.
Okay, go ahead. Question in the back.
So,
okay, wait. You need a microphone, or we won't be able to hear you. But let's go with right back there.
So, first thing I just wanted to say is that somebody mentioned nation states and their advantage. We have something called InfraGard, which is a coalition between the private sector and the government, FBI. If you don't know about it, look it up. It's great. But my question. Who's a member? What's that? Yeah, who's a member of InfraGard?
I used to be on the board. Yeah. Organization.
Excellent. I wouldn't be here today without them, so very thankful. My question for the panel is, we talk about technology vectors and hardening our systems, but one of the biggest attack vectors is people. You know, somebody mentioned social engineering. What are some of the things that you guys have done to convince your superiors or your CEOs to spend more time training or maybe more resources in security?
I mean, I think one of the basic things most companies are doing is running regular phishing programs, right? We've spent a lot of time and energy in building that out, and I think the key point with that is making sure there's follow through and action when people actually fail the test or fail the phishing test. That's the key. Is you want them to fail once and then kind of get it right after that. That's one item.
I guess I'm up. So I think you've got to sell the program in terms of getting that budget and the monies for training. What we do is if somebody fails, like if the department, if one person fails, I punish the whole department except that one person. I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
I thought beatings weren't.
No, but a lot of it is selling that program. And I'm a big proponent, and I'll piss off the CIOs here, is I don't work for a CIO, we're peers, and it's a lot easier for me to get those budgets than having to come under the IT budget.
Let's pass it to Phyllis.
What happened with the pandemic? We took all of our associates, all of our people, we sent them home. And what did we suddenly do to our attack surface? We widened it so significantly. It is now, the router in my house is now an attack vector. I'm still not back in the office, thank you very much. And that means we have to increase the education to go with it. They are our last line of defense. At one point, my daughter said, my company put this screensaver on and it has this flaming firewall. What are they trying to tell me? And I said, you are the last line of defense. You are the one who is at risk. You know, if we make for better, more security-aware professionals within the environment, we are also making for a better, more security-oriented populace, and that's huge.
Is one of the things that we've done at MARTA is we do what we call a cybersecurity roadshow, and we go to different departments and provide about an hour of cybersecurity training. But what we don't do is we don't force them around, these are the things you do or don't do at MARTA. We gear that presentation on how you can protect yourself, how you can protect your family, because that translates back to the organization. Most people, they're like, if there's no punitive damage, they're like, oh, I clicked on it, who cares, right? But they don't want their parents getting a ransomware, they don't want their kids getting ransomware. So you bring that education and teach them about basic cybersecurity to protect themselves. And boy, we've seen an increase of people emailing me, hey, this email looks fishy, what should I do with it? Or I've gotten this, what should I do with it? It's a great tool because people don't like that technical, don't do this at your company type of training.
So we have one question, and then we have about 7 minutes.
Thank
Get
you.
under 5.
So my question is in regards to third-party risk, right? Is there any company out there that is too big to fail? I say this in light of what happened during the financial crisis. Lehman Brothers was allowed to fail. So what I'm saying is that things are happening on the cyber side, and they're getting a pass. So for instance, SolarWinds happened, and a lot of companies got compromised, including Microsoft, that admitted that their O365 code was also compromised. But they're getting away with it in terms of all it just will just give you some patch to patch your systems, and it's going to be business as usual. So at what point do we get to that these companies pay a real price for letting bad stuff happen on their watch? So Equifax happened, afterwards they made huge profit. Home Depot stuff happened, they made huge profit. So these companies are coming out, smelling like a rose after big incidents. So my question is, at what point do we allow these companies to keep on, that we rely on, pretty much relying for, for our subsistence, to keep on just getting away with it, just allowing just patching, and that's it. So again, this is in terms of third party risk. Thank you.
Phyllis?
Are you picking up on the trend? Let me.
I'm trying to figure out who's wrapping gifts.
I know.
Yes,
Can we
exactly.
keep the taping down, please? It's the virtual audience is being most affected. So,
one of the important things to note is that for those companies, it was very painful. It was very costly. They did appear to bounce back, but that was not without pain. It was not without effort, and it was not without loss of staff. Right? There were fingers pointed. There was blame, and a lot of they cleaned house. We all learned from those attacks as well. And our regulators and the standards groups that we all work with, such as PCI, they all learned from it too, unfortunately. And you can look back at the breaches and you can see how it affected FBA exams, how it affected PCI and so on, and what they would look at, because we're learning. The hackers are inventive, they are focused, and they don't have the slowdowns that we do, and they certainly have better budgets than we do, as has been stated. So, given that, I think those companies were large enough that they absorbed the fines. And those fines can be extensive. I know that we all pay a significant cost for not only maintaining our organizations in terms of the hygiene, but in terms of verifying for those people that matter to us, our regulators, our assessors, our auditors, and most of all our clients. We pay a huge cost in terms of making sure that they have the information they need to know that we're safe.
So I think just in the interest of time, that was a great answer. Thank you. And thank you from the audience for the questions. We just have a couple minutes left. And I think for the vendors that stayed around, thank you very much. That didn't break down your booth. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and this question is actually to help you, because without you, the FutureCon events would not happen. So I've asked the panel to give some tips on how you can actually get in front of these security people that actually make the decisions to buy your software. So let's start with, yes, down, okay. Let's come down this way.
It seems like a lot of people are wanting to get in front of all of us, and it's usually painful.
From your side or their side? Both. I know. Okay.
The easiest way to get in front of me is to make a personal contact, not a Salesforce sales project thing where I get an email every other day saying more and more stressed out, hysterical sounding things about how, did you get my last email, which I am not impressed by. That is not the way to get me to say, oh, I'm interested in your product, because they're not telling me anything. They're just saying, gee, I really want to talk to you. That's a random wrong number, essentially. It's like getting a letter that said, I love you, darling, please marry me, or I will kill myself, and you check the address, and it's addressed to occupant.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just how you approach people. It's common sense. I mean, when you get a spam email that a vendor's sending to every security executive in town, it's very obvious. So I'd say try to make a connection first, get to know the person, establish a relationship if you can. You know, if I know you personally and you reach out, until recently, I'm very responsive. I'm kind of busy lately, but I think most executives are responsive. They want to help out, but it's all about the approach.
So I got an email that said, "Dear, insert name here." Don't do that. It's really bad. I get 100 emails a day, and can you spare 15 minutes? I can't. For me, the ones that really speak are the ones that kind of go into how they're going to help me. When somebody says, oh, Dean, I saw that you're the AGM of Information Security / CISO, I know they're just looking at LinkedIn and they're just trying to sell. It's hard to get in front of me. I've got so much to do and I've got so many emails to go through that a lot of times it's as I look down as we build the program, what do I need? And then I'll say, okay, I know I saw an email. But to his point, a lot of it's personal relationships that I've built with some of the vendors that come really more as friends than as vendors. So I've got a couple of sales guys that are friends, and if they move to another company, I'll look at their product just to look because I'm friends. I might not buy it, but at least I'll get a vision of it. And some of those I've went, oh, you know what? I could really use that. I know that's a pretty lame answer because it's hard to build those relationships, but I just hate the spam, I'll be honest with you.
But Dean, are you coming to these events and talking to people? Is this what you mean by forming relationships and getting to know people? Is this where it happens, or? So
I do. The worst thing that I hate is when I pop by a booth and they scan my tag and then I'm getting an email that, the next day, hey, the best is, hey, I saw you at the event and I didn't even go to the event, but maybe I'd been signed up. Some of it's just relationships, but you've got to provide a product that's going to do for me what I need done. And I mean, that's hard. And like I said, it's a lame answer, but because I really can't say how you're going to get in front of it. Every once in a while, a product will spark my attention. Or really, quite frankly, and these guys talk to people, is they'll say, what do you use? What have you tried? and they'll say, oh, well, check out this person or this vendor. And a couple of those I'll give my personal cell phone to, but not most. Lame answer, I know, sorry.
I'm gonna go last on this question.
So be forewarned, he's going last for a reason. But as everyone has kind of intimated, it is a lot to do with the personal connection. And one part of that that's most important to me is, am I actually in the market for whatever it is you're selling, right? You're much more apt to get in front of me that way. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want you to waste my time. So I don't want just a random sales pitch. If it is something that I know my organization would benefit from, even though it's not in my potential budget, I'm apt to give you a little bit of time and be as straight with you as I can about, this is not my budget. Maybe I can introduce you to somebody if I'm impressed by you, right? But it may not go beyond that, guys. It's not within my bailiwick. So, personal, and is it appropriate?
10 minutes.
You've got 1 minute.
I love this question. But in all honesty, right? Number one, never reach out to me and tell me you've got the thing, you know what my problem is, and you're going to fix all my problems for me, and you got the greatest thing on the planet. Don't. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm probably going to connect with you. Don't send me a message 2 seconds later that is a pre-typed, copied and paste, 3 pages I've got to read with an attachment that says, hey, check out my product, right? I am going, if I accept your connection, I'm probably going to look at your product and decide whether or not it's something I need to look at, right? All of you, every one of you in here who is a vendor, sync up your friggin' business development database with who is a customer. There are customers in here, there are people in here that I have been a customer of yours for 5+ years. I get calls from your business development people all the time going, I'd love you to look at my new product. I'm like, I've been a customer for 5 damn years. Sync the databases up. It's a pet peeve. If I'm getting calls from your people, I will call your manager if you're a business development person and go, why are your people calling me? Fix that. I don't know why that's so damn hard. It's Salesforce. Figure it out. Right? I'm just
okay, now let's
I'm just saying, God bless people. You guys have figured that out.
And we're out of time.
Right? But no, I mean the thing is personal relationships are huge. I come to these events. I come to a lot of these events. I am opinionated, as we've all noticed. Oh, what a surprise! But if you've got a compelling product that piques my interest, I may have a conversation with you. Is it necessarily, as Phyllis alluded to, is it necessarily something that I own or is going to be? No. But if I think it's interesting enough for me to introduce you to people, great, I will do that. Do never put an invite on my calendar without asking me. Never. That is a guaranteed way I will never look at your product again.
Or you'll get blocked.
Or blocked, right? So just never just send me random invites, right? But if you take the time to sit down, and if I decide to have a meeting with you because I think your technology has some interest, and I'm one of the guys, and there's a few guys up here who know me very well, I'm one of the guys who love to look at emerging technology. I love to look at where the startup community is. I love to look at what new things are coming out. And I love to look and see if I am missing out by staying with a Gartner top right coordinate. Yeah, well, we'll get it. That's a whole nother discussion that we're not going to have. But I am interested in looking at who is doing cool things, who is making disruption in the market, and who has a good product. I will listen to that. Is it something I'm going to buy tomorrow? No. Not normally, unless I've got some emergency and dumpster fire that I need to go put out right now, right? But what I really want to know is, where are people looking at the problems that we're trying to solve? who is listening to the community and looking at the things we're trying to solve, and who is approaching that in an intelligent way, and who is willing to sit down and listen to those of us who will have this conversation with you. And there's a lot of folks in this room who will, and go, this makes sense, this is not any value to us at all, right? Or why the hell did you get in this market? Because there's 900 competitors in here, and why are you different? If you can't tell me in 3 minutes why you're different from a crowded market that you're in, I don't care. Just plain and simple. If you can't get your message across in 3 minutes on why you're better than the 19 other people out of the 4,200-ish security companies that are selling me product, if you don't have a clear message, then you don't have a clear vision. You don't have a clear roadmap. At least that's my opinion.
That is a good way to end it. Thank you. Thank you to the panel. You're amazing. And the audience, you asked really good questions, thoughtful questions. And again, thank you to the vendors. I know this, I told everybody in the panel to please be frank and honest. And I didn't really have to tell them that, but they were. But you all are the reason that we put these, we were able to put this event on to bring everybody together. So thank you very much. And the most important thing